Is a compact gimbal worth it? With the Zhiyun Crane M3, there's plenty of design prowess, features, and compatibility for action cams, smartphones, and mirrorless cameras. But is it worth it? I'm James Hertz from MUO, and we're going to talk about how the Crane M3 performs and whether its compact build will fit your needs. Now, there's two things you'll notice once you first lay your eyes on the Crane M3. First off, you're going to notice its design styling as well as its compact size. Now, towards this end, let's think about how it is different. Now, in comparison to typical gimbals, which usually have more of a monochromatic scheme where it's either a black or a gray, we have a white and black contrast here with some red highlights for added pop. Now, in terms of sizing, the gimbal comes out at 11 by 6.2 by 3 inches when it's folded, and when it's actually expanded without the tripod, it's 10.2 by 5.3 by 5.9 inches. Now, you have to think about this relative to other gimbals of Zhiyun's line. The Smooth Q3 and the Weeble 2, if you put this side by side with the Crane M3, are certainly different size categories. And with a gimbal that only weighs 735 grams, you can appreciate the undertaking for this compact gimbal handling mirrorless cameras. For those looking for a travel-friendly gimbal, you can probably infer from the Crane 3 size that it's pretty easy to travel with. Now, you can purchase the combo package or the pro package of the Crane M3 and get Zhiyun's backpack, but it's really small, so even if you just fold it up and remove the tripod, it can easily fit in a personal tote or something like a backpack without you having to worry about any damage to the unit. Now, besides the portability of your gimbal, you want to focus on how easy it is to balance. You don't want to be fiddling with it incessantly just to get balance and then have to swap it off the build plate and then go through that process again. Now, with something like the Crane M3, you specifically wonder if it can really handle a mirrorless camera and what its actual payload limit is when it's dealing with multiple device types. So let's look at exactly how balancing with the Crane M3 goes. So let's move on to talking about balancing, and specifically in the case of mirrorless cameras first. Now, with the Zhiyun Crane M3, checking the camera compatibility list from Zhiyun is probably more crucial than ever. Now, there are a few reasons for this. First off, it mostly benefits from working with compact lenses because you're going to have to meet the gimbal's payload. Now, specifically for testing, I used the Sony FE 50mm f2.5 ultra compact G series lens, and this is one that didn't have any additional problems. You're still going to need to check the compatibility list to see if the eyepiece cover will hit the roll axis when you're balancing it, and in many cases the more compact lenses don't, but you want to be aware. Now, to balance the Sony a7R III, I used two of Zhiyun's mounts. Now, there is the standard quick release plate that comes with the Crane M3, but there is also a universal quick release plate that was released separately as an accessory for the Crane M3. Now, in general testing and balancing, there's not a huge difference with it, it's just some convenience differences. Now, foremost, this showed up when working with the tilt axis. Now, to balance it, you do get the usual vertical and horizontal adjustments, and you want the camera body close to the tilt axis. Now, when doing this with the standard quick release plate, when you're trying to get the level mount adjusted via the lock screw at the front, it can hit your camera body. So typically you have to loosen the screw and then pull the camera body away and then move it back. And it becomes almost a three-handed job to get the initial balance right on it. Now, with the universal quick release plate, there is a latch which allows you to pull it away. Now, this makes it a lot easier to adjust it without it being much of a demanding measure to get the tilt axis just right. Now, moving on from the tilt axis, let's talk about the roll axis and why this might give you some pause when balancing it. Now, if you go straight to Zhiyun's manual, it mentions with the roll axis that you just want it level and not moving, so it's centered like this. Typically with the roll axis, though, it's going to remain stationary and not tilt back. Now, what I found with this gimbal is the roll axis never seems to balance perfectly. I don't know if it's due to the arm length or the compact nature of the gimbal, but it seems like holding a mirrorless camera puts it right at its payload limit. And this allows it not to do this. Now, the motors can certainly compensate, and there's no issue in actual use and smoothness with the gimbal, but it's something that may give you pause if you're used to balancing traditional gimbals. Now, once you've balanced a mirrorless camera with the Crane M3, everything else becomes much simpler. Now, I didn't have an action cam for testing, but I did do 2 smartphone balancing tests. I used a Google Pixel 3 XL first, and then I used the Google Pixel 6 Pro. Now, the only thing you really need to keep in mind when doing a smartphone mount is you need to pay respect to the clamps hole that you screw into. Now, depending on which one you use, this can throw off the balance of your device. And if you are having issues balancing your phone, this is probably the case. So again, it's very easy otherwise to balance it and for the motors to handle something like a cell phone. And you would expect as such from a gimbal of this power that can handle otherwise a mirrorless camera. Now, beyond balancing, let's talk about actual operation of the Crane M3. And most of this starts with the 1.22-inch touchscreen at the rear of the unit. Now, there are a few things to note about this. First off, it's really snappish and responsive. Usually my fingers have an issue when tapping on smaller touchscreens and hitting something I don't want in terms of a selection. With this unit, I really didn't have the issue. Now, in terms of readability, it's also very well lit without hurting your eyes, so you can see the screen very clearly. Now, what are some things you might jump into with it? Obviously, there is the mode selection, so you can jump between any of the default camera modes that you're probably accustomed to with Zhiyun products. And also, it's really the smoothest way to get into portrait mode for vertical shooting. Now, another thing is when you are going under the settings, one of the things you may be inclined to do, especially when dealing with a mirrorless camera for the first time, is go through auto calibration. This checks the lens and the camera weight and resets the motor torque towards the appropriate balance. Now, this is good if you're really not sure how much strength to use, but you want to keep your shooting smooth. Now, one thing I will note with this is sometimes when I would do auto calibration, I would have the camera mounted, that I would feel some vibration at the base of the gimbal. In those cases, it's nothing that you need to be alarmed about. It simply has raised the motor torque to a higher degree. And while it's idling, such as sitting on the table, you may feel some vibration there. You can change this by simply lowering the motor torque from, say, medium to low and not have any problems there. Now, once you've dealt with the touchscreen, there are a variety of shortcuts and things in reach of your hand to work with. Now, at the right, there is a 1/4 inch expansion port, which allows you to equip something like a handle. Beneath it is the fill control light for the integrated fill light on the gimbal. Now, we're going to talk about that more in detail since it is very important to the gimbal. Now, also at my left, there is the power button as well as the Type-C charging port. Now, also at the front, right beneath the touchscreen, we have the control stick, which allows you to make some precise changes and tweaks there. There is also the M button, which follows Zhiyun's usual shortcut key scheme to allow you to swap between modes. A single press will allow you to go between pan follow, follow and lock. A double press between point of view and vortex. And if you long press it, it will go and put the gimbal into sleep mode. Now, if you do something like accidentally turn the gimbal on and it goes into sleep mode because you have unlocked all of the axes, you can rectify it from here versus turning the gimbal on and off. Just long hold the M key and it's going to wake up. Now, beneath it is the record function, but you're not going to have much use unless you do have the cabling for your respective camera plugged in. Now, at the front, there is a control wheel. Now, in terms of functionality, it's more limited even when you do have your camera attached by its respective cable. In the case of the Sony a7R III, the only thing I was able to control was the roll on it. Now, beneath it is the trigger button. Now, if you double press it, it allows you to reposition the gimbal like normal against you moving it. And if you triple press it, then you can enter selfie mode with the gimbal and double press it to go back. Now, also another thing to keep in mind with it is if you do long hold it, you can go into go mode very easily, so you can swap to that as needed. Now, in terms of overall functionality, I was really pleased with the grip ergonomics of it because everything is in succinct reach. So if you're looking to access the functionality of your gimbal without much headache, it is all designed very well on the Crane M3. So let's return to the integrated fill light. Now, I've previously dealt with a fill light on the Smooth Q3, and this was a much weaker light, but it did provide some mood lighting. Now, with the Crane M3, there's a lot more creative control options with it. Now, accessing it, as previously mentioned, is via the control wheel here, which you hold on to turn on the light, and then from there you tap it to go between the various presets. Now, you can adjust either the overall color temperature, which is measured in kelvins, or you can adjust the actual brightness, which goes up in increments of 10. Now, if I did have a complaint about this menu, the thing is, if you're not actively making an adjustment, you're not raising the temperature or adjusting the brightness, then it's going to cut back to the main screen. So if you're looking and pausing to see exactly how it looks, you're just going to have to note that you're going to have to tap and go back in and make adjustments there versus just sit and stare and go back and forth between the screen. Now, another thing to note is they have included some magnetic light filters that you can add on. These are in different colors with a yellow, a red, an orange, and a blue, and you can really set the mood of whatever you want. Now, this works not only in a very well lit scenario, but it also works in some darker ones as well. So if you're looking for something to really help you deal with lighting on the go, the Crane M3 has taken some of the Q3's lighting and made it all the more better while still keeping it in a compact package. So while features are great, what ultimately matters with a gimbal is what you get in terms of your footage. Now, there is a sturdy metal body at the top between the different axes and the arm for the gimbal, and at the base you do have a very premium plastic feel with some rubbering to make it convenient. Similarly, as with most other gimbals, there is a tripod attached with some rubbering, so it's both anti-slip in terms of your grip and also makes it comfortable and more stable while holding it long term. Now, other things I need to talk about are exactly what kind of shooting scenarios I went through with this gimbal. Now with the Crane M3, usually my baseline test is some sort of hiking. Now with a mirrorless and this small compact gimbal, I want to know if it can handle things like different elevations and different heights and some of the rougher terrain while moving. Now, in terms of smooth footage, I really didn't have any issues. I was still able to get some very strong footage without any real wobble in terms of what I was getting from the gimbal. It was all smooth and strong. Now, also, I was not only able to take it to that kind of location, but I was able to take it into a public space. Typically, when I do see gimbals in even lightly congested areas, you're usually locked to something like a smartphone gimbal simply because of size. Now, I was able to take the Crane M3 into a public space without it being inconspicuous and also not really getting in the way of anyone. So this was really nice. In both scenarios, I didn't have to deal with lumbering a very large gimbal just to deal with a mirrorless camera. And that is really a big saver on the part of the person, especially if you're doing something from a far off shoot location like a hike, or if you're just dealing with it in public where you don't want to bump anyone accidentally or have some accidental harm to your camera. Now, beyond the smoothness test, we want to talk about battery life and how long you can actually operate this gimbal. Now, first off, Zhiyun has provided some lab tests where it takes around 2 hours to charge ideally, and you can get around 8 hours of operation. Now, there are some variables to this, but the 8-hour performance does largely hold true. But if you're doing things like using a USB cable and charging your camera with the gimbal device, then obviously you're going to have weaker battery life, or if you're really pushing the motors to its limit. So let's talk about what you can do in terms of dealing with the battery and how easy it is to swap batteries of your camera and how that looks. Now, with the standard quick release plate on the gimbal, if you do tilt it up, you'll notice that it will cover the battery compartment of most cameras. This is a downside to the standard quick release plate. It makes it so you have to dismount the camera and then take it off and then change out your battery. Now, with the universal quick release mount that we have for the Crane M3, it's a simple matter of sliding off this piece, which just goes over the mounting screw of your camera and leaves the battery compartment free. So it's easy to pop it on and off and swap the battery and then resume shooting. Now, in terms of other things, as previously mentioned, the cabling can go from the gimbal and allow it to charge your camera. Now, in this case, with the Sony a7R III, the multi-USB port would charge the camera without issue. Now, another thing to keep in mind is with the power delivery port at the side of the gimbal, you can use this during operation to charge your gimbal. So if you do have a power bank, you can keep it charged and extend your shooting time while also theoretically extending your camera's battery life. So overall, it really has enough time for whatever kind of shoot you need, as long as you do a little bit of pre-planning with it. Typically with Zhiyun's gimbal products, there is an integrated app, and the Crane M3 is no exception to that case. Now, as is more of their professional line of gimbals, it goes and pairs with the ZY Play app. Now, overall, this is not very much an intrusive app, and it's not something you're really locked behind for features. It is simply a supplement if you want to take advantage of the Bluetooth 5.0 connectivity on the gimbal. This will allow some remote control of the gimbal, let you set up things like panoramic shots or time lapses, and allow you to do some more customized tweaking of things like the axes versus presets like it's on the gimbal itself. Again, it's completely optional and you can completely ignore this feature, but if you do want some access and some remote control, you can definitely use the ZY Play app with the Crane M3. So the question is, should you purchase Zhiyun's Crane M3? Now, if you're after a stylish compact gimbal that has professional use applications and can cover a wide range of devices, it covers you there. However, there are some things that you need to consider. First off, you do need a compatible camera and lens, so you do really need to check Zhiyun's compatibility list. Now, also you do need to consider there may be some initial balancing hurdles, and in terms of accessories for the Crane M3, only the universal quick release plate is available from the store directly, otherwise you're locked to whatever package you purchase. So if you do want something like the expansion base for the microphone jack or the wireless receiver, then you need to consider purchasing the Pro package from the get-go. Sometimes Zhiyun's accessories make it to the store later, so depending on how long you can wait, this is something to keep in mind. But overall, if you want a gimbal that can fulfill your everyday needs, is compact and has a lot of power behind it, the Crane M3 will serve you there. So a big thanks as always for Zhiyun for providing the Crane 3 testing unit. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below, and like and subscribe if you enjoy this style of content. A big thanks as always for watching, and for a more in-depth written review, be sure to check out makeuseof.com.